There are rare cars, there are ultra rare cars, then there's the 1994 Porsche 964 Turbo Flatnose.
This car is shrouded in mystery. In an age before the internet, it was possible for a manufacturer like Porsche to develop and produce a car in relative secrecy and to surprise even their own dealers when they told them at short notice it would be an option they could sell to their customers. Information on the car is so scant, it wasn't even officially acknowledged by Porsche to have actually existed until 2004, a full 10 years after the car had been produced. It was then that Porsche confirmed that only 76 had ever been made. Add to that small number the fact that only 27 were made to this specification for outside of the USA and Japan, and this is one of only 2 known to have been fitted with right-hand drive. This is one of the rarest road-going Porsches ever. At a base price of $160,000 and some going for as much as $190,000 all the way back in '94, it was also one of the most expensive road-going Porsches ever, even by today's standards, and it's the last of the truly hand-built 911s. It has a 3.6-litre single turbocharged engine, 385 horsepower and criminally few miles on the clock. All in all, this is a pretty special ride, and today I have it and a track all to myself.
So for the story of this most ridiculously rare car, we have to go back to the mid-70s, Norbert Singer and Group 5 Racing, because in that series the 935 needed an edge, and Norbert Singer had gone through the rulebook and found a loophole. He was able to remove the headlights and create a flatter, more aerodynamic front to the car, and so the Flatnose was born. Later that Flatnose was offered as a customer option on the 930. Not many were picked up though, so it has now become an extremely rare car. And a bit later again, when the 964 was being discontinued in favour of the new 993, this car was Porsche's way of saying goodbye. Customers were given the chance to buy one. They had to put down a $20,000 deposit, and all they had to go on was a sketch of what the car could look like. It actually never looked anything like the picture, and only 76 people took Porsche up on the offer. Now there are some touches on this car that make it quite easy to spot to the eagle-eyed viewer. The slanted nose, flat nose, or Flachbau as it's known in German for flat construction, is the most obvious. Those headlamps look like they're straight out of the 968, and they give a huge amount of character to this car. From the driver's position they look absolutely ridiculous, and from the outside of the car they don't look that much more serious, but they're a lot of fun. And when they fold back in, you're back to that aerodynamic flat nose again. You might notice some other touches though that distinguish this from a regular 964 Turbo. Those intakes of the rear wheel arches, for example, those are straight out of the 959. But really, for me, the story is about driving this thing. Now, this is the last of the rear wheel drive turbos. So here we have 350 odd horsepower, a top speed of 180 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat, and all of the power is going to the rear wheels. It makes this thing slightly more lively than the current 991 generation turbo. Well, slightly is not the right word. As a manual gearbox, of course, and I tell you what, I enjoy this more than the modern manual gearboxes on Porsches. The clutch travel is far, but it's not as hard work as modern cars by a long shot. This has the same problem that old Porsches had, where the pedal box seems to be offset by a good half foot to the left, so your whole body feels twisted. But really, apart from that, I find it hard to fault this car. It's difficult to drive. You feel, when pushing it around the corners, you feel it twitching, you feel the steering get a bit floaty. But that's what real driving is meant to be about. And a Porsche Turbo is meant to be scary. This car is a widowmaker, and it has a reputation. The most notable part of the experience of driving this is how the turbo feels. Below 4,000 revs, it feels nice and calm and building, and then when you hit 4,000 revs, it just kicks out of nowhere. It does hit you like a force. It jumps up so quickly, and you feel like you have to get on the brakes almost immediately, because that turbo kicks you from 4,000 to 6,000 revs like it's no one's business. For track driving, you have to keep it spooled up to make any use of it for any amount of time, but when that turbo kicks in, it feels like a real turbo Porsche. All Porsche Carreras are going to be turbocharged now, but this is what we mean when we say 911 turbo. This is not the kind of car that you could ever learn to drive well in. You need to get in this car knowing how to drive. Your lessons will be very soon cut short by a very abrupt stop in a ditch if you let this thing get away from you. It feels like all the best bits of the 80s married with 90s technology. I don't know if I could live with this car on a day-to-day basis. I genuinely would have too much fun and die if I drove this car too much. And apparently that's what the owner must have thought as well, because despite this car being 22 years old, it has only about 600 miles on the clock. Let's put a few more on there. Driving this car today has been an enormous privilege, but in a way it's made me sad. It's reminded me of everything that we've lost in modern cars and in modern 911s. Those are all great cars, but there's just something about this perfect harmony between design and engineering, and the skills it requires to drive make you feel alive behind the wheel. This thing is amazing.